So my name is Jimmy Stiles, and I'm a PhD student in the School of Forestry and Wildlife Sciences at Auburn University. And one of the things that I study for my PhD is salamanders and salamander diversity. And Alabama is home to an amazing amount of salamander diversity. All right. Now what am I supposed to say?
Salamanders.
Salamanders, right. So, salamanders are amazing. So Alabama has an incredible diversity of salamander species. We rank as one of the top states in the southeastern United States for salamander richness, species richness, so the number of salamanders that inhabit a state. And that places us high up in the world rankings as far as salamanders go, because the southeastern United States is a hotspot for salamander diversity. The southeastern U.S. has more different kinds of salamanders than anywhere else of a relative size in the entire world. And part of what makes Alabama and the southeastern United States so special for salamander diversity is a couple of things. One, our temperate climate. We have nice, cool winters, which a lot of people think amphibians, they think warm, they think summer. Most salamander species, or certainly a lot of our salamander species, are most active in the winter time. That's when they do their breeding and courtship. So wintertime is often when salamanders breed, as well as when they're most active. A lot of that is due to salamanders' intolerance for really hot weather. If you notice that salamanders, if you go out in the middle of summer, you'll find salamanders along brooks and creeks and things like that where it's naturally a little cooler. But if you go flip over raw logs and rocks and things like that, there's a lot less salamanders to be found in the summer, because they don't do well with obviously hot, dry conditions. So our cool, wet climates are better for salamanders. But again, you don't want Arctic cold either, right? If the salamanders don't freeze very well, a lot of the species don't. Some of them can, but one of the things that kind of makes the southern and southeastern United States so well suited for salamander species is the fact that we're somewhere in the sweet spot between hot and cold, right? It's never too cold in Alabama, but it's not super hot either. So that helps add to our salamander diversity. As well, Alabama's incredible diversity of water resources help to play a role for salamander diversity. And Alabama has lots of different watersheds and lots of different types of aquatic environments. Everything from deep water swamps to large rivers to small first order streams and ephemeral wetlands. So all of these places are home to different species and suites of salamander species. So one of the reasons that Alabama has so much as far as diversity and species richness of salamanders is because of all the many varied habitat types that we have in our state. One of which is these first order streams that weave their way through the Piedmont, Ridge Valley, and other provinces we have. These little streams like this don't have very many fish, right? They're not big. They can't support large predatory fish like bass and brim and things like that. And so it provides very good habitat for a wide variety of salamander species. Often in these creeks, you find species such as the spotted dusky salamander, which is a very common species we have in Alabama. Two-line salamanders, three-line salamanders. Most of these salamanders belong to the group of lungless salamanders, the Plethodontidae, and they are really cool. They eat things. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but yeah, they're so yeah. Little streams like this that we have here are very important for a lot of the salamander species that we have in our state. All right, so today we're at a really cool habitat for salamanders, and right now I'm standing in a pond. Of course, there's no water in the pond right now, but that's because it's an ephemeral or vernal pond. Vernal ponds dry up during the summer when it's hot. You know, all the water evaporates out. Then when the evaporation rate is a lot lower in the winter, and which is also in Alabama when we get most of our rainfall, these ponds will fill up, and a lot of species of salamanders and other amphibians have adapted to these environments. And that's really important for a couple of reasons. One is predators, right? If there's a pond and there's no water in it, well, there's no fish. So having an ephemeral pond or a vernal pond that dries up periodically removes any of the fish, which are some of the biggest predators of salamander species, and so it reduces the amount of predators. As well, it creates a good habitat that's unique for amphibians to breed in, right? So amphibians, they lay their eggs normally in water. A lot of our species lay their eggs in water. And so what will happen is these ponds will fill up, the eggs will get laid in the water. Sometimes some species of salamanders will even lay their eggs before the pond fills in hopes that the pond will fill. And then those eggs hatch and the larvae come out, start swimming around. Most salamanders, again, have aquatic larvae that live in the water. And those larvae will swim around. Well, then those larvae will lose their gills and they'll transform into terrestrial adults that are suited for terrestrial environments. So a pond that dries up allows for that life cycle. It kind of almost perfectly matches the life cycle of a lot of these species of salamanders. Right now the pond is dry, but hopefully in a couple of weeks this will all fill with water as we get our winter and spring rains, and at that point the salamanders will migrate from the uplands and come down to the pond where they will then lay their eggs, or the eggs will hatch out from being laid earlier in the season. So this is a Webster's salamander. This is one of the Plethodon salamanders, or lungless species of salamanders, which the lungless species of salamander in the Plethodontidae family comprise a lot of our species richness of salamanders here in Alabama. And certainly you know, across the southeast. All right, so in these ponds, like I said, some salamanders come and lay their eggs before the pond actually fills, and they'll lay them, ooh, like this guy right here, under the log. So they'll lay their eggs under these logs in hopes that in a few weeks or months, the water will fill, and that will provide an aquatic habitat for the larvae. One salamander that does that a lot in the central Alabama area is this guy here, the marbled salamander. Marbled salamanders prefer these vernal or ephemeral ponds that are covered with hardwoods and have lots of downwoody debris, which is where they lay their eggs. But these guys are super cool. They have this beautiful marbled pattern on their backs, and are really, really amazing salamanders. These guys are in the mole salamander family, or Ambystomatidae, and are one of our more common species that utilize these vernal pools. So we'll set him back. You can see they're also amazingly camouflaged for their environment. Again, in these vernal pools, there's a couple other salamanders that use these pools. One really common one is the spotted salamander. Spotted salamanders will migrate up onto the hills, and then as the ponds start to fill, they'll come back down to the ponds and hang out under logs. Here's one now. Look at this guy. So these guys are beautiful little salamanders. And they will migrate on warm, rainy nights, often in December through about March, depending on where you are and the state of the vernal pool. But spotted salamanders are one of our, in my opinion, most beautiful salamanders that we have in the state. And they have these series of beautiful yellow dots along their body. One neat way that scientists are monitoring populations of spotted salamanders is by taking photographs of these patterns, because the spotting pattern on a spotted salamander is unique to the individual. So by taking a picture of the spotted salamander's pattern and putting that in a computer database, researchers can then go out and track individual salamanders, which helps us to create population models to figure out how the populations in a particular breeding site are doing.
Hey guys, my name is Lauren Muncher. I'm the Park Naturalist here at Oak Mountain State Park, and as you've already seen, this is Jimmy Stiles. He is a PhD student at Auburn University and one of my greatest idols when it comes to herpetology. So I guess my first question to you is, how did you get involved in salamanders? How did you get interested in salamanders?
So when I was a little kid, my dad was a biologist, and several of his friends were biologists, and we used to go out and catch salamanders. You know, salamanders are a very approachable creature, right? We had a little creek in my backyard, even though it was in suburban Birmingham, and so I could just go right behind the house, flip over rocks, catch salamanders. And so, you know, from an early age, you know,
yeah, kind of born into it.
I was born into it, and yeah. You know, they're everywhere. Salamanders are everywhere in Alabama, so it's easy to just go right out and find one.
And they're cute.
And
so like you
awesome.
can't, yeah, they're
right,
awesome.
yeah,
Salamanders are awesome. So one thing that I get asked a lot too is, why are they important? So what is your thought on that?
So salamanders are important for a couple of things. One, they just have an innate importance in, like all biodiversity we have on our planet, right? We might not even know or see that importance, right now, but over time, the longer science goes on, the more importance we find in the intricacies of biodiversity and how it relates to food webs and all these sorts of things. But also, salamanders are environmental indicator. So salamanders, one of the cool things about salamanders is they can absorb things through their skin. The lungless salamanders, they get all their gas exchange right through their skin and through the lining of their mouth. So obviously, if there's toxic chemicals in that that they're absorbing, that can be very detrimental to salamanders. So salamanders, the presence of salamanders is an indication of the health of our environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so would you say that because, you hear a lot about about pollution and global warming, all these things, are they on the decline? Would you say they're on the decline?
Certainly, some species are definitely on the decline. Impacts to their habitat, pollution, right. Things like that are having an impact, as well as development in their, and impacts to the water that they need. So, being an amphibian, got to have water, right? And a lot of their habitats, a lot of our waterways are being negatively impacted by pollution, and really importantly, one thing that a lot of people don't think about is dirt. Dirt is a big problem. And everybody's like, well, why is dirt such a big problem? Well, in a stream, right, that's called sedimentation, and that sedimentation greatly impacts the habitats, the little microhabitats that salamanders use to lay eggs and things like that.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So out here at Oak Mountain State Park, we have a ton of different types of salamanders all along our creeks and our vernal pools. Watch out for some of our programs. We do have some vernal pool programs when the vernal pool has water in it. But definitely come check it out. It's a great place, great biodiverse place. Come hang out with us. We'd love to have you. So Oak Mountain State Park, we are part of the Cahaba River watershed, similar to Shades Creek. And so all the water you see here eventually ends up in the Cahaba River. So we have a lot of the similar species in the Shades Creek area, and here it's going to be really similar to that. So it's all going to end up in the beautiful Cahaba River, which I could talk a whole other hour about the Cahaba River, but sure. It's just phenomenal. But just a beautiful place out here in the park. Come check out some of our salamanders. We got some fun ones out here.